We'll handle the final negotiations from here, Elena. No offense, but women tend to get emotional in these situations. That's what Douglas said to me. After 8 months. 8 fucking months of 80-hour weeks building this deal. The $12 million merger I had sourced, nurtured, and structured from nothing. I just stood there in the conference room doorway, my presentation materials in hand, as 5 men in nearly identical suits stared at me like I was a waitress who'd walked into the wrong meeting. I'm Elena Ward. I'm 34, and until 3 weeks ago, I was the Director of Strategic Partnerships at TerraVest Capital. I'm the woman who increased our company valuation by 340% in under a year. I'm also the woman who smiled, nodded, and said, I understand when they told me I wasn't welcome in the room I'd earned the right to be in. Before I go deep into this, like this video, subscribe to our channel, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I read all of them. I really do, especially now that I have more free time than expected. So, you want to know what happened? God, I'm still processing it myself. I've never actually said all this out loud before. Let me back up a little. TerraVest was a mid-sized investment firm specializing in sustainable infrastructure. I joined 4 years ago after business school and a stint at Goldman. Not the typical career path for a girl who grew up in a double-wide in rural Pennsylvania. But I've never been typical. From day one, I knew the culture was, let's call it traditional. The kind of place where men called their wives the ball and chain and laughed about it. Where I was asked to take notes in meetings even though I outranked half the men there. Where I had to wear heels but not too high, makeup but not too much, be confident but not aggressive, smart but not threatening. You know the drill. But I played the game because the work was interesting and frankly, the money was good. I had student loans that looked like a mortgage. I had a mother with medical bills. I couldn't afford principals. When I pitched the Axion merger last year, it was actually Douglas, our chairman, who seemed the most skeptical. Elena, he said, leaning back in his chair with that patronizing smile. Axion is way out of our league. They're not going to take us seriously. I remember exactly what I was wearing that day. A navy pantsuit that cost me a month's rent but made me feel like I belonged in that room. They will if we show them the synergy potential. Their renewable portfolio perfectly complements our urban development funds. Together, we'd control the most comprehensive green infrastructure package on the market. God, I can still see the looks they exchanged. Like I was a child who'd said something accidentally clever. Brendan, our CFO, actually chuckled. That's cute, Meg, but Axion's not looking to be acquired. They've rejected offers from firms 10 times our size. I'm not suggesting we acquire them, I said. I'm suggesting a merger of equals, and I have reason to believe they're interested. That got their attention. What I didn't tell them was that I'd already had 3 unofficial conversations with Axion's VP of Development, Christine. We'd met at a conference, bonded over being the only women in a panel discussion, and stayed in touch. She'd hinted that Axion was looking for exactly the kind of market position that TerraVest could help them achieve. Give me 3 months, I said. If I can't get a preliminary meeting, we drop it. No resources wasted. Douglas sighed like I was asking him to let me borrow the company car. Fine, 3 months, but don't get your hopes up. I didn't need 3 months. I had a meeting scheduled with Axion's executive team 6 weeks later. For the next 8 months, I lived that deal. I'm not exaggerating when I say I dedicated every waking hour to making it happen. I built financial models until 3 a.m. I flew to Boston 5 times to meet with their team. I learned everything about their business, not just the numbers, but the people, the culture, the pain points. I remembered their kids' names, their hobbies, their favorite restaurants. Christine became my ally, then my friend. We were 2 women navigating a landscape designed to exclude us. When her father got sick, I sent flowers. When I caught the flu during a critical phase, she postponed a meeting rather than let her colleagues push ahead without me. Meanwhile, the men at TerraVest grew increasingly excited as they saw the deal taking shape. Suddenly, Douglas was calling me our secret weapon. Brendan was asking for my input on valuation models. I was invited to golf outings, though I still had to pretend to be worse than I actually was. Don't threaten the male ego and all that. The deal we structured was beautiful. A true merger of equals that would triple our company's value and create an industry powerhouse. Axion's CEO, David Mercer, told me directly, "Elena, you've thought of everything. This is the best structured deal I've seen in 20 years." I still have the text from Douglas after that meeting. "Whatever we're paying you, it's not enough. You're a fucking rock star." That's what makes what happened next, so I don't even have the word for it. Surreal, devastating, predictable. We were one day away from the final signing. The term sheets were prepared. The lawyers had reviewed everything. We just needed to address a few last-minute concerns from Axion's board. I had spent the morning rehearsing my presentation, anticipating every possible question. My assistant, Zoe, had just brought me a fresh coffee when Douglas appeared at my office door with Brendan and our general counsel, Martin. "Hey, Rockstar," Douglas said. That should have been my first clue something was off. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Quick chat?" They closed the door behind them. Martin stayed standing by the door like some kind of guard. "We've been discussing the final approach for tomorrow," Douglas said, perching on the edge of my desk uninvited. "And we think it's best if the executive team handles the closing." I didn't understand at first. "Of course. I've prepared all the materials for us. I was thinking we should address their concerns about the technology integration up front rather than—" "No, Elena," Brendan cut in. "What Douglas means is, we'll handle it. The executive team. You've done amazing work getting us here, but tomorrow needs to be, well, it's a different kind of negotiation." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "I don't understand. I've led every meeting with Axion so far." Douglas sighed, like I was being difficult. "Look, tomorrow is about power dynamics. The final terms, it can get tense. We need to present a unified front." "I am part of that front," I said. "I built this deal." That's when he said it. Looking me straight in the eye, Douglas Vance, chairman of TerraVest Capital, said, "We'll handle the final negotiations from here, Elena. No offense, but women tend to get emotional in these situations." I felt like I'd been slapped. 8 months of my life, countless nights and weekends, the deal that was going to define my career, and I was being sidelined because I had the wrong reproductive organs. "That's not—" I started, but my voice caught, and that hesitation, that moment of very human hurt, was all they needed to see. "See?" Brendan said gently, as if my reaction proved their point. "It's high stakes tomorrow. We can't afford any uncertainty." I wanted to scream. I wanted to flip my desk. I wanted to remind them that I was the only reason Axion had even taken our call. Instead, I took a breath and said, "The Axion team is expecting me to be there. I've built the relationship with them." "We'll explain that you've been called away on an urgent matter," Martin said, his first contribution to the conversation, and it was to help construct a lie. "Is this coming from David?" I asked, grasping for some explanation that wasn't raw sexism. "Did he request this change?" The 3 men exchanged glances. "No," Douglas admitted, "but we know how these things work, Elena. The old boys club is still real. Once the scotch comes out, well, it's just different." I sat there, trying to process what was happening. Everything in me wanted to fight, to demand my rightful place. But I also knew this company. I knew these men. If I showed any emotion now, it would only confirm their bias. "I understand," I said finally, my voice steady. Relief flooded their faces. They hadn't expected it to be this easy. "That's why you're the best, Elena," Douglas said, standing up. Always professional. They filed out of my office, already discussing who would present which part of my presentation. As soon as the door closed, I put my head in my hands and just breathed, in and out, fighting back tears that I refused to shed in that building. Zoe knocked and entered a minute later. "Are you okay?" They looked, and smug. "I'm fine," I said automatically. Then I looked at her, really looked at her. Zoe was 24, bright, ambitious. Would she face the same walls I had? The same dismissal after proving herself over and over? "Actually, no," I said. "I'm not fine. They're excluding me from the Axion signing tomorrow. Her mouth fell open. What? That's your deal. Apparently, I might get too emotional. That's discrimination, she whispered, closing the door. You could sue. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. And then what? Be known as the woman who sued when she didn't get her way? Never work in finance again? Zoe sat down across from me, her face flushed with righteous anger on my behalf. It was touching, and also a reminder of how young she was, how naive. So, you're just going to let them take credit for your work? That question hung in the air between us. Was I? After everything, was I going to smile and take it? Add this to the pile of indignities I'd swallowed over the years? I stood up and went to the window. From the 18th floor, the city looked like a model, everything miniature and perfect. I could see the Axion building from here. No, I said finally. I'm not. But I didn't have a plan yet, just a burning certainty that I wouldn't let this stand. I turned back to Zoe. I need you to do something for me. Pull all my notes from the Axion meetings. Every email, every presentation, every model, everything that shows my contribution. Are you going to the CEO? She asked, already typing notes. Our CEO, James Wilson, was Douglas's brother-in-law and golfing buddy. He'd signed off on excluding me, guaranteed. No, I said. I'm going to think. I spent the rest of the day in a fog, mechanically completing tasks while my mind raced. I smiled at the men who'd betrayed me when I passed them in the hallway. I contributed to discussions about other projects as if nothing had happened. I was the perfect professional woman they wanted me to be. But inside, something had broken. Or maybe something had finally come clear. At 6:15, Douglas stopped by my office again. Most people had gone home. He closed the door. I just wanted to check in, he said, his voice gentler than before. Make sure we're good. I looked up from my computer and gave him my best corporate smile. Of course. I understand the decision. He nodded, relieved. I knew you would. That's what sets you apart, Elena. You're ambitious, but you're not, you know. Emotional? I supplied. He laughed, missing or ignoring the edge in my voice. Exactly. Listen, this deal is going to mean big things for all of us. The board's already discussing equity packages. You're not being forgotten here. So that was the carrot. Shut up, step aside, and maybe they'd throw me some scraps from their table. I appreciate that, I said. Douglas lingered, studying me. You know, when we hired you, there were some concerns. A woman in business development. It's not traditional. But you've proven yourself. In that moment, I hated him with a clarity that startled me. Not just for what he was doing to me now, but for the casual way he informed me that my gender had been a concern from day one. As if I should be grateful they'd taken a chance on me despite my obvious deficiency of not being male. Thank you for taking that risk, I said, the words tasting like ash. After he left, I sat motionless for a long time. Then I opened my bottom drawer and took out the emergency bourbon I kept for closing difficult deals. I poured a finger into my empty coffee mug and drank it straight. My phone buzzed. A text from Christine at Axion. Just heard you won't be at the signing tomorrow. Everything okay? I stared at the message. Christine, who had become a friend. Christine, who had trusted me to be honest with her throughout this process. Christine, who, like me, had fought to be taken seriously in an industry that still saw women as secretaries who'd forgotten their place. I started typing, deleted it, started again. Finally, I wrote, called away on something urgent. The team will handle everything. 3 dots appeared as she typed back. That's disappointing. You're the heart of this deal. I put the phone down without responding. The heart of the deal. If only Douglas and the others saw it that way. I poured another bourbon and walked to the window again. The Axion building was lit up against the darkening sky. Tomorrow, in a conference room very much like ours, men would congratulate each other on a deal they hadn't built. They'd sign papers I'd prepared. They'd become richer, off my work. Unless. I'm not sure exactly when the idea formed. It wasn't a lightning bolt moment, more like pieces falling into place, one by one, until the picture was clear. I picked up my phone and called my college roommate, Sarah, now a partner at Kellerman Lopez. one of the top law firms in the city. Elena, long time. How's the big merger going? I took a breath. That's actually why I'm calling. I need some advice. Off the record. There was a pause. Okay. Give me 5 minutes to wrap up here and I'll call you back on my personal cell. While I waited, I pulled up the Axion deal documents on my computer. Not the sanitized versions we'd been sharing, but my working files. The real story of how this deal came together. Sarah called back exactly 5 minutes later. All right, I'm in my car and this is my personal phone. What's going on? I told her everything. The months of work, the relationships I'd built, the way I'd been excluded at the last minute. By the end, my voice was shaking, not with tears, but with rage. Jesus, Elena, Sarah said when I finished. I wish I could say I'm surprised. I need to know my options, I said, and I need to know them now. Well, you could file a discrimination claim, but it would be my word against theirs. It would take years, and it would destroy my career even if I won. I finished for her. What else? Sarah was quiet for a moment. What exactly are you thinking of doing? I looked at my computer screen, at the files that represented nearly a year of my life. I don't know yet, but I need to understand what I legally can and cannot do. Okay, she said slowly. Let's start with your employment contract. What does it say about intellectual property and client relationships? We spent the next hour going through the fine print of my agreement with TerraVest, the non-compete clauses, the ownership of work product, the definitions of confidential information. By the end, I had a much clearer picture of my constraints and my opportunities. Elena, Sarah said finally, whatever you're planning, be careful. These people have more power than you do. I thought about Douglas's smug face, about being told I was too emotional for a meeting I had earned. Maybe, I said, but I have something they don't. What's that? I looked again at the Axion building across the city. I have the truth, and I'm not afraid to use it. After we hung up, I sat in my darkened office for a long time, thinking. Then I began to methodically download files. Some I had the right to, as they were my personal work product. Others, well, let's just say I was creating insurance. At 10:30 p.m., I finally packed up my things. As I was leaving, I ran into Martin coming back from the executive bathroom. Working late? He asked, surprised to see me. I smiled, just getting everything ready for tomorrow's big success. He nodded, clearly relieved that I was being reasonable about my exclusion. That's great, Elena. Really professional. I always am, I said. That's what sets me apart, right? As I walked to the elevator, I heard him on the phone. Yeah, she's fine. No, totally fine with it. Douglas was right. She gets it. I stepped into the elevator, my bag heavy with files and my mind made up. They thought they knew what kind of woman I was. Professional, accommodating, willing to be sidelined for the greater good. They were about to find out how wrong they were. I didn't sleep that night. Not a wink. Just lay there in my apartment staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with possibilities and consequences. Outside my window, the city lights blurred through tears I finally allowed myself to shed. Not sad tears, angry ones. By 5 a.m., I gave up on sleep and made coffee, sat at my kitchen island with my laptop, sorting through the files I'd brought home, building my case, building my courage. I showered and dressed with unusual care. Black pencil skirt, white silk blouse, the red-soled heels I usually saved for client meetings, armor. At 7:30, I texted Zoe, working remotely this morning. Need you to do something important. She responded immediately, anything. I sent her detailed instructions, then grabbed my bag and headed out, not to TerraVest, but to a coffee shop 3 blocks from Axion's headquarters. I ordered a latte and claimed a corner table, watching the door. At 8:45, Christine walked in, looking confused. She spotted me and came over. Elena, what's going on? I thought you were called away on something urgent. She made air quotes with her fingers. I was, I said. By Douglas. Please, sit. I have something to tell you, and it can't wait. She sat down slowly, her expression wary. The signing is in 2 hours. I know. I took a deep breath. Christine, I need to tell you the truth about what's happening at TerraVest, and then you can decide if you still want this deal to go through. Her eyebrows shot up. That sounds serious. It is. I opened my laptop and turned it toward her. Yesterday, Douglas, Brendan, and Martin informed me that I wouldn't be attending the signing. Despite the fact that I've led every meeting, built every model, and created the entire framework for this merger. Christine's expression darkened. Why would they do that? Because, I said, my voice steady, and I'm quoting directly, women tend to get emotional in these situations. She stared at me, then laughed in disbelief. You're joking. I wish I were. But that's ridiculous. You're the most level-headed person I've worked with through this entire process. I know, but they decided that the final negotiations should be handled by the executive team, meaning the men. Christine sat back, processing. I could see the calculations happening behind her eyes. Elena, I appreciate you telling me this, but why? What are you hoping to achieve here? This was the moment. The point of no return. Because you deserve to know who you're really partnering with, I said. And because the deal they're presenting today isn't the deal we built together. That got her attention. What do you mean? I turned to a specific spreadsheet. These are the final financial projections I prepared. The ones Douglas and Brendan have, they've adjusted them. They've inflated TerraVest's contribution to the combined market expansion by about 17%. Christine leaned forward, studying the numbers. Are you sure? Positive. I found the revised models on our shared drive last night. They're planning to use the more aggressive projections to argue for a larger equity stake than we agreed to. Her face hardened. That's not what David approved. I know. I hesitated, then continued. There's more. The technology integration timeline they're presenting has been shortened by 2 months. It's not realistic, but it makes the deal look better on paper. Christine pulled out her phone and started typing rapidly. I'm texting David. He needs to know this before the meeting. Wait, I said, putting my hand on hers. There's something else you should know. I took a deep breath. I quit TerraVest this morning. Her eyes widened. You what? I emailed my resignation letter to the board at 6 a.m. I've also filed a formal complaint about gender discrimination with our HR department and the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. Christine sat back. Jesus. Elena, that's a big move. It is. I closed my laptop. But I can't work for people who value me enough to let me do all the work, but not enough to let me take the credit. She nodded slowly. I get it. I really do. But the merger. We've both worked so hard on this. I know. And I still believe in it. But not with the current leadership at TerraVest. Christine studied me. What exactly are you suggesting? I smiled for the first time that morning. I'm suggesting you postpone the signing. Tell them you need more time to review the final terms, that some concerns have come up. And then what? And then you wait. Because in about, I checked my watch, 30 minutes, Douglas and the board are going to get some very interesting emails. Christine's eyebrows shot up again. What did you do? Let's just say Zoe is sending some documents that will make this morning very complicated for them. As if on cue, my phone buzzed. A text from Zoe. Done. All emails sent. I showed Christine the message. It's done. What did you send them? She asked, a mix of concern and admiration in her voice. Everything. My original projections side by side with their inflated ones. Emails where they discuss excluding me from the meeting and their reasons why. Documentation of every instance over the past 4 years where I was overlooked, underpaid, or pushed aside because of my gender. You kept records of all that? I nodded. I'm a data person, remember? I document everything. Christine let out a low whistle. And you sent this to the entire board? And the executive team? And to a journalist at the Wall Street Journal who's been covering gender discrimination in finance? I paused. And to David Mercer. She nearly choked on her coffee. You sent all this to my CEO? Today? Yes, because he deserves to know who he's getting into bed with. literally and figuratively. Christine stared at me, processing what I'd just done, what we had just done, because by sitting here with me, she'd become part of it. Elena, she said finally, this could kill the deal. It could, I agreed, or it could create a better one. Her phone started buzzing. She glanced at it. It's David. You should take it. She answered, listening intently. I could hear David's voice, but not his words. Christine's eyes stayed locked on mine as she spoke. Yes, I'm aware. Actually, I'm with her right now. I think we should postpone the signing until we can review the new information. Yes, I'll come right back. She hung up. David wants me back at the office. He's just received your email and he's processing. I nodded. Go. Do what you need to do. She stood, then hesitated. What happens to you now? It was a good question. One I'd been asking myself all night. I don't know, I admitted. But for the first time in years, I feel like I'm making choices based on what's right, not what's expected. Christine nodded, understanding. I'll call you later. After she left, I sat there, waiting. It didn't take long. At 9:17, my phone exploded with notifications, texts, calls, emails, all from TerraVest. Douglas, Brendan, Martin, even James, the CEO. I ignored them all. Instead, I opened my email and clicked on the one from Sarah, my lawyer friend. The subject line read, your next move. Inside was information about 3 different firms that were looking for someone with my expertise. Firms known for their female leadership and inclusive cultures. Along with a reminder that legally, I was on solid ground as long as I didn't violate specific terms of my contract. At 9:45, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I answered. Is this Elena Kaplan? A woman's voice. Professional but warm. Speaking. This is Elaine Roberts from the Wall Street Journal. I received your email with great interest. I'd like to discuss the possibility of an interview. My heart raced. I'd be open to that. Excellent. And I understand you're currently between positions? I couldn't help but laugh. As of about 3 hours ago, yes. Well, your timing is interesting. I've already received calls from 2 firms asking for your contact information after hearing rumors about what happened at TerraVest. That surprised me. Already? How would they even know? Ms. Kaplan, the financial world is small, and gossip travels fast, especially when it involves a $12 million deal and accusations of sexism at a prominent firm. I sat back processing this. I haven't even given an interview yet. No, but your email to David Mercer was apparently quite compelling. From what I gather, he shared some of its contents with a colleague at Baxter Hamilton, who then called my editor asking about you. Baxter Hamilton, one of the largest investment firms in the country, known for their aggressive recruitment of female talent. I see, was all I could manage. Would you be available to meet later today? Elaine asked. I think your story is important, and I'd like to get your perspective directly. Yes, I said. I'm suddenly very available. After we arranged a time, I sat in the coffee shop, watching the world go by outside. My phone continued to buzz with messages from TerraVest, growing increasingly desperate. The latest was from Douglas himself. Elena, please call me. We can fix this. Axion is postponing the signing. We need to talk. I ignored it and opened my laptop again. I had preparations to make before my interview with the Journal. Just then, another text came through from Christine. David is furious. Not with you. With them. He's questioning whether TerraVest is the right partner for us. We're reviewing other options. I smiled to myself. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about consequences. At 11:30, I packed up and headed to my apartment to change before meeting Elaine. As I walked, my phone rang again. This time, it was Zoe. Elena, it's insane here, she whispered. Douglas is having a complete meltdown. The board called an emergency meeting. HR is running around like their hair is on fire. And the Axion people just officially canceled the signing. Are you okay? I asked, suddenly concerned for her. You won't get in trouble for helping me, will you? Are you kidding? I've already updated my resume. I'm not staying in this cesspool. Besides, 3 people have asked me if I'm loyal to the company today. As if I owe them anything after what they did to you. Her indignation made me smile. Be careful, Zoe. Don't burn bridges you don't have to. Too late, she said cheerfully. I may have accidentally replied, all to Douglas's company-wide email about your unfortunate decision to resign during this critical time, with links to several studies about gender discrimination in finance. I stopped walking. Zoe, you didn't. I did, and I regret nothing. She paused. Oh wait, James is calling me into his office. Gotta go. Probably to fire me. Worth it. She hung up before I could respond. I stood on the sidewalk, torn between admiration for her courage and guilt for potentially costing her her job. My phone buzzed with another email. This one from David Mercer, Axion's CEO. Ms. Kaplan, I'd like to meet with you privately to discuss recent developments. Are you available this afternoon? Interesting. Very interesting. I texted back. I have a media commitment at 1 p.m., but I could meet at 3. His response was immediate. 3 p.m. works. My office. I'll have security expect you. As I continued walking, my phone rang yet again. This time, a Boston area code. I answered. Elena Kaplan speaking. Miss Kaplan, this is Alexandra Winters, Chief Operating Officer at Baxter Hamilton. Do you have a moment to talk? I stopped walking again. Alexandra Winters was legendary, one of the highest-ranking women in finance, known for her ruthless efficiency and for mentoring female talent. Yes, of course, I said, trying to sound calmer than I felt. I'll be direct. I've heard about the situation at TerraVest, and I've reviewed some of your work on the Axion deal. I'm impressed. We'd like to discuss bringing you on board at Baxter Hamilton, leading our new sustainable investment division. I nearly dropped my phone. That's very flattering. It's not flattery, Miss Kaplan, it's recognition of talent. And I'll be even more direct. What TerraVest did to you is unfortunately common. What's uncommon is having the courage to stand up to it with evidence rather than emotion. That's the kind of leadership we value. Thank you, I said, genuinely moved. I'd be very interested in discussing this further. Excellent. My assistant will contact you to schedule a formal interview. And Elena, between us, what you did took guts. Don't let anyone make you feel bad about it. After we hung up, I stood on the sidewalk, looking up at the buildings around me. 3 hours ago, I'd been a disgraced former employee burning bridges. Now I had a media interview, a meeting with Axion's CEO, and interest from Baxter Hamilton. All because I refused to be silenced. By the time I reached my apartment, I had 7 more messages from TerraVest. The latest was from James, the CEO. Elena, please call. The board wants to discuss your concerns. We can make this right. Too late, James. Way too late. I changed into a simple black dress professional, but not trying too hard, and headed to meet Elaine from the Journal. The interview lasted 2 hours. She was thorough, fair, and genuinely interested in the systemic issues behind my personal story. I was careful not to violate any confidentiality agreements, focusing instead on the cultural problems at TerraVest and in finance generally. What do you hope comes from sharing your story? She asked toward the end. I thought about it. I hope other women see that they have options, that they don't have to accept being sidelined or diminished, that their work has value, and if their current company doesn't recognize that value, others will. She nodded, seeming satisfied with that answer. The piece should run tomorrow. I'll send you a draft for fact-checking before we publish. From there, I went straight to Axion's headquarters. The security guard checked my ID, made a call, and then personally escorted me to the executive floor. David Mercer was waiting in the conference room, along with Christine and 2 people I didn't recognize, a man and a woman, both in their 50s, both radiating authority. Ms. Kaplan, David said, standing to shake my hand. Thank you for coming. These are Robert Chen and Diane Foster from our board of directors. I shook their hands, trying not to show my surprise. Board members at an impromptu meeting? This was either very good or very bad. Please, sit. David gestured to a chair. I'll get straight to the point. We've spent the day reviewing the situation with TerraVest, including the documents you provided. We've also spoken with Douglas Vance and James Wilson. My stomach tightened. I see. They're quite eager to salvage the deal, David continued. They've offered several concessions, including removing Douglas as chairman, Christine added. That surprised me. Really? David nodded. They're in damage control mode. Your email to their board raised serious concerns about their corporate culture and the accuracy of their financial representations. No one wants that kind of publicity right now. I sat back, processing this. So the deal isn't dead? That depends, Robert Chen said, speaking for the first time. We still believe in the strategic rationale behind the merger, but we have concerns about TerraVest's leadership and ethics. And that's why we wanted to meet with you. Diane Foster added. We'd like your honest assessment. Setting aside what happened to you personally, do you still believe this merger makes sense for both companies? It was a good question. The professional question. The one that looked beyond my personal grievance to the business reality. Yes, I said after a moment. The strategic fit is still there. The market opportunity is real. But, I leaned forward, the merger of equals concept only works if there's mutual respect and honesty. Based on my experience, those are in short supply at TerraVest's current leadership level. David nodded. That's consistent with our thinking. Which brings me to why we asked you here. He slid a folder across the table. This is a formal offer of employment. We'd like you to join Axion as our new head of strategic development. I stared at the folder. You're offering me a job? We're offering you the chance to finish what you started, Christine said, but from our side of the table. I opened the folder. The compensation package inside made my eyes widen. It was nearly double my TerraVest salary, with significant equity components. This is very generous, I said carefully. It's commensurate with the value you've demonstrated, Diane said matter-of-factly. And frankly, it's also strategic. We plan to move forward with a modified version of the merger. Having you on our team would significantly strengthen our negotiating position. I looked up from the papers. You're still planning to merge with TerraVest? Even after everything that's happened? David smiled slightly. A modified version. We're thinking more along the lines of an acquisition now, rather than a merger of equals. We'd acquire them, I clarified, hardly believing what I was hearing. Yes, Robert said. Their board is suddenly very motivated to make a deal. Any deal. Happen quickly. Before your story breaks and their stock takes a hit. We believe we can acquire them at a significant discount to what we were prepared to pay yesterday. I sat back, stunned. This wasn't just a job offer. It was the chance to be on the winning side of the very deal I'd created. To watch as Douglas and the others had to accept terms dictated by the company they'd hoped to dominate, and by the woman they'd dismissed. We understand you may have other options, David said, clearly referring to Baxter Hamilton. News really did travel fast in this industry. We're prepared to give you 24 hours to consider our offer. I appreciate that, I said, but I don't need 24 hours. I'd be honored to join Axion. Christine broke into a grin. Welcome aboard. As we shook hands, my phone buzzed yet again. Douglas, calling for the 12th time that day. I silenced it without looking. Someone important? David asked, noticing the gesture. Not anymore, I said, and meant it. 3 weeks later, I'm sitting in Christine's office. My new office mate until the renovation of my own space is complete. The Wall Street Journal article ran as planned, generating exactly the reaction you'd expect. TerraVest's stock dropped 14% in 2 days. Douglas resigned to pursue other opportunities. James issued a public apology and announced a full review of the company's diversity and inclusion practices. And yesterday, Axion formally announced its acquisition of TerraVest Capital at 68% of the valuation we'd negotiated in the original merger. I led the announcement call, with David and our CFO flanking me. Zoe came with me to Axion, along with 2 other talented women from TerraVest who'd been overlooked for too long. The exodus continues as more women, and some men who value ethical leadership leave for competitors. I could pretend I don't feel satisfaction about how this all played out, but that would be a lie. I do feel satisfied. Not because I got revenge, but because I forced consequences on people who never expected to face any. In the end, it wasn't about being emotional or not emotional. It was about being honest with myself and with others, about what I deserve, about what we all deserve. Yesterday, a young analyst stopped me in the hallway and said, "I applied to Axion because I read about you. I want to work somewhere women can succeed." That meant more to me than any deal ever could. So here I am, recording this video from my new office, with a view of my old building across the city. I can see TerraVest's logo from here, soon to be replaced with Axion's. Sometimes when I look at it, I think about Douglas's face when I walked into the acquisition announcement meeting. The shock, the disbelief, the dawning realization that he had created this outcome with his own arrogance. "We'll handle the final negotiations from here, Elena," he'd said. "Women tend to get emotional in these situations." He was right about one thing. I did get emotional. I got angry. And that anger didn't weaken me. It clarified exactly what I needed to do. Sometimes the most professional thing you can do is walk away. But make sure you take your value with you when you go. And maybe, if you're lucky, you'll find people who recognize that value, who see you not as a woman trying to fit into a man's world, but as a leader who brings unique perspectives and skills to the table. I found those people. They were at Axion all along, waiting on the other side of the deal I created, waiting to welcome me home.